It was just another day in the small town of Crestwood, or so it seemed. The sun hung high in the sky, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps as people hurried in and out, their faces etched with the weight of their own problems. Inside, the air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle and your heart race, even if you're just a bystander. The courtroom was packed, a sea of murmurs and shuffling feet. But all eyes were on her, a young black woman dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, standing tall despite the weight of the room's judgment. She didn't look like someone who belonged in the spotlight, but fate had other plans. Officer Dan Harris, a veteran cop with a reputation for being a little too confident, stood a few feet away, his arms crossed and a smirk playing on his lips. He'd seen it all before. People who thought they could talk their way out of trouble. People who thought they were above the law. To him, this was just another routine day, another chance to put someone in their place. But this time, something was different. There was a quiet strength in the woman's eyes, a calm defiance that made him uneasy, though he'd never admit it. He leaned in, his voice dripping with condescension, as he addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this woman here thinks she's above the law. She refused to comply with a simple traffic stop, and now she's wasting the court's time with her." Excuses. The room seemed to hold its breath. The judge, an older man with a stern face, adjusted his glasses and turned to the woman. "Is this true?" he asked, his tone neutral but firm. She didn't flinch. Instead, she took a step forward, her gaze steady as she reached into her pocket. The room tensed. Officer Harris's smirk faltered for just a second, his hand instinctively moving toward his belt, but what she pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a small, gleaming badge, the kind that carried weight, the kind that made people sit up straighter. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm but commanding, "my name is Agent Maya Carter. I'm with the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, silencing the room. Officer Harris's face went pale, his confidence crumbling as the reality of the situation sank in. The judge leaned forward, his expression shifting from stern to intrigued. Even the spectators, who had been whispering among themselves, fell silent, their eyes glued to the woman who had just turned the tables on everyone in the room. But this was only the beginning. As Agent Carter began to speak, it became clear that this wasn't just about a traffic stop. There was something bigger at play, something that went far beyond the walls of this small-town courtroom. Officer Harris's actions had set off a chain reaction, one that would expose secrets, challenge loyalties, and force everyone in that room to confront the truth. And as the tension reached its peak, the judge raised his gavel, ready to make a decision that would change everything. But before he could speak, a loud knock echoed through the courtroom, and the doors swung open. Everyone turned, their hearts pounding, as a figure stepped inside, a figure no one expected to see. The room froze. The story was far from over. The figure standing in the doorway was a man in his late 40s. His sharp suit and polished shoes, a stark contrast to the worn-out decor of the Crestwood courthouse. His presence commanded attention, and the room seemed to shrink under his gaze. He scanned the crowd, his eyes landing on Agent Carter, and for a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. A flicker of recognition, a shared understanding. The man stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the silence, and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I believe this case requires a closer look." He held up a folder, thick with documents, and placed it on the bench. "My name is Special Agent Marcus Reed, and I'm here to provide additional context to this situation." The judge hesitated, his gavel still poised in midair, before nodding curtly. "Proceed, Agent Reed." The room buzzed with whispers, but a sharp look from the judge silenced them. Officer Harris shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado now replaced with a growing sense of dread. He glanced at Agent Carter, then at Reed, trying to piece together what was happening. This wasn't supposed to go this way. It was just a traffic stop, just another day on the job. But as Reed began to speak, it became clear that nothing about this day was routine. "Your Honor," Reed began, his voice steady but carrying an edge of urgency, "this case is connected to an ongoing federal investigation. Agent Carter was operating undercover as part of a larger operation targeting corruption within local law enforcement." He paused, letting the words sink in. The room erupted into murmurs, but Reed continued, undeterred. The traffic stop in question was not a random act. Officer Harris's actions were part of a pattern of behavior that has drawn the attention of federal authorities. We have reason to believe that he, along with others in this department, has been involved in activities that undermine the integrity of the badge he wears. Officer Harris's face flushed with anger, but before he could protest, the judge raised a hand. "Let him finish," he said firmly. Reed nodded and opened the folder, pulling out a series of documents and photographs. He handed them to the judge, who studied them carefully, his expression growing darker with each passing second. The tension in the room was palpable, a coiled spring ready to snap. Agent Carter remained calm, her eyes never leaving Reed, as if silently communicating a plan only the two of them understood. As the judge reviewed the documents, Reed turned to the crowd, his voice taking on a more somber tone. "This isn't just about one officer or one traffic stop. This is about a system that has failed the people it's meant to protect. It's about accountability, transparency, and justice. And it's about ensuring that no one, no matter their position, is above the law." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The spectators exchanged uneasy glances, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Crestwood was a small town, and everyone knew everyone. The idea that someone they trusted could be involved in something so serious was hard to swallow. Officer Harris finally found his voice. "This is ridiculous," he blurted out, his face red with indignation. "I've been on the force for 15 years. I've served this community with honor. These accusations are baseless, and I won't stand here and let some federal agent come in and smear my name." His voice cracked with emotion, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a shadow of fear that he couldn't quite hide. "Agent," Carter stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. "Officer Harris, this isn't about smearing anyone's name. This is about the truth. And the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how hard someone tries to bury it." The judge cleared his throat, silencing the room once more. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm inclined to take this matter very seriously," he said, his voice grave. "Officer Harris, you are hereby suspended pending further investigation. Bailiff, please escort him out of the courtroom." The words hit like a hammer, and Harris's shoulders slumped as the reality of the situation set in. He shot a glare at Agent Carter and Reed, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and betrayal, but he said nothing as the bailiff led him away. The room watched in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over them like a thick fog. But even as Harris was removed, the tension in the room didn't ease. If anything, it grew thicker. Agent Reed turned to the judge, his expression serious. "Your Honor, this is just the beginning. There are others involved, and we need to move quickly before they have a chance to cover their tracks." The judge nodded, his face grim. "Understood. What do you need from this court?" Reed glanced at Agent Carter, then back at the judge. "We need access to all records related to Officer Harris and his colleagues, and we need your discretion. If word of this gets out too soon, it could jeopardize the entire investigation." The judge leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled as he considered the request. The room waited, the silence stretching on as the seconds ticked by. Finally, he nodded. "Granted, but I want regular updates. This town deserves to know the truth, and I won't let it be swept under the rug." Reed gave a curt nod. "Thank you, Your Honor. We'll do everything in our power to bring this to a swift and just conclusion." As the judge adjourned the court, the spectators began to file out, their voices low but buzzing with speculation. Agent Carter and Reed exchanged a quick glance before heading toward the exit, their minds already racing with the next steps. But as they stepped outside, they were met with a crowd of reporters, their cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward. "Agent Carter, can you comment on the allegations against Officer Harris?" one reporter shouted. "Is this part of a larger investigation into police corruption?" another asked. Agent Carter paused, her expression unreadable, before turning to face the cameras. "We can't comment on an ongoing investigation," she said firmly. "But what I can say is this: no one is above the law, and we will do whatever it takes to ensure justice is served." Her words were met with a flurry of questions, but she didn't linger. With Reed by her side, she pushed through the crowd, her mind already focused on the next move. The stakes were high, and the clock was ticking. But as they walked away, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but heavy with implication. Who else was involved? And how far did this go? The story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning.